There's a new day dawning, the time is at hand, where the glory of the Lord will be revealed to every man. Open the door, open the door, open the door, and let the King of Glory in. Open the door, open the door, open the door, and let the King of Glory in.
Yes, my friends, open up the doors starts right now, and this is Pastor Doug Kinney, pastor of Hampton's Christian Fellowship, sitting in the studio for Andy White, because our studio is under quarantine. We are trying to protect the health of all of our friends, because I have the virus and I've been in the studio, so we have requested that Andy would not come in today, but we're going to have him join us by phone. So he's going to be on the show. Basically, he's going to be hosting the show, in a sense, over the phone, and Meg is with me as well, my lovely wife, Meg. Both of us, unfortunately, have this virus that is going around, but our symptoms are not that bad, so we're able to come on the radio. We have, due to our modern technology, we are able to access the radio from our bunker. As we are in exile, we're in quarantine, and we are here in an undisclosed location, and we've been doing radio. We're so grateful that we can still do something while we have this virus, and we are now under quarantine for a few weeks. At least for us, it keeps changing because there's more people in our family, and one by one, we've gotten it, and our children. But we appreciate your prayers. We decided to sort of go public with this, not make it a secret, but let people know. We want people praying for us. And also that we can be able to just encourage our listeners, let our listeners know that, like they're saying, most people who get the virus, it is not life-threatening for most people. It is just like having a virus that you may have had before. We're not saying that the danger isn't real, because obviously it's super contagious from what we are hearing and learning. So you have to be careful, and especially those who have a compromised health system, a compromised immune system, and especially if you have lung issues, asthma, whatever it may be. You can hear in my voice, my voice is definitely affected. And usually when I wake up in the morning, I'm feeling a lot better than I am at this time of day, starting to sort of feel in my voice is going a little bit. But we have Andy who is going, we're going to get him on the line in a moment.
Okay, sounds good.
Yes. How are you? I'm going to welcome my other guest first.
I'm okay.
Lovely, beautiful Megan Kinney is here.
I'm all right.
One of the first cases in Sag Harbor, and
known cases.
One of the first known cases, and it's a difficult thing because we were discussing this earlier, last week, because you are now recovering very well, and I just started having symptoms.
Right.
And it's sort of like, it's so private, you don't want to tell people, but you have to tell people who you were around.
Exactly.
And now the word has gotten out, and
I know.
But in a good way, we've had some angels drop by, and suddenly there have been meals at the door.
Right, which
is
really nice.
Some of our friends are just amazing. It was perfect timing because it was right around lunchtime, and some of our friends just dropped off pizza.
So
our kids devoured that, I think, and or most of it, which is good because they have appetites. So,
which is really good.
We're doing fine.
Don't have such a great appetite at all. I haven't really, which is,
Right.
not necessarily. I'm trying, but it's like, I don't know.
So we have our program, or Andy's program, Open Up the Doors. We're going to take a break here and play a song. And many of you know that I love Van Morrison. We're going to throw a song on by Van Morrison while we get Andrew on the line, and we'll continue with Open Up the Doors. Okay, is that yeah?
Sounds like a plan.
That's our plan. Stay tuned. Don't go anywhere.
Down those old Dixon streets.
Yes. And we're quarantined until we get the healing done.
Yes.
And but
Stir
we will
crazy.
get the healing done, or God will get the healing done. Van Morrison, cool song, Till We Get the Healing Done. And one of the reasons, if you just tuned in, you're tuned in to Open Up the Doors with Andy White and Doug and Meg Kinney sitting in because our studio is under quarantine, but we have Andy calling in over the phone. From what we know, you cannot get the virus through the phone. So we have Andy. Andy, are you there?
Speaking through the phone.
I am here.
Yes.
Although I think there are other viruses going around today in the tech world. Between the I'm being facetious.
Right.
With all of the Wi-Fi connection problems and streaming problems that have been going on today.
Yes, we have some streaming problems, definitely.
Yeah, I know. You've been dealing with them all day. I was listening to you guys earlier this morning.
Mm-hmm.
You had on that pastor from
Lloyd Pulley.
New Jersey.
Lloyd Pulley. Mm-hmm.
What's that? Meg, how are you doing, Meg?
Good. Lloyd Pulley is his name. Pastor Lloyd.
Lloyd Pulley.
Mm-hmm.
I get a brain freeze every time I think of the guy. Lloyd Pulley. Yeah, that was a really, really good interview, I felt, and I thought you guys were hitting all the bases that needed to be hit for the most part.
Sure.
But the main thing is number one, I'm really happy and glad that you guys could take the broadcast today, and that you are recovering, of course. Been praying for you guys. Been praying for the whole situation that we're all dealing with.
Right. Absolutely.
And so thanks for manning the fort there, getting in the bunker over there at Faith FM.
No problem.
Again, we're just
That's
praying
what we
that go ahead, Meg. What's that?
I said that's what we do. We jump in the bunker.
Yep. But so yeah, I wanted to certainly update this audience, my regular audience, let them know what's going on and the very unusual situation that we're dealing with today, and trying to get the broadcast out to them and let them know what's going on. So it's this thing I think is a real conundrum that we're all dealing with in a lot of ways. It's a real difficult situation with a lot of different layers to this onion skin. On so many different levels. And for folks like you that are dealing with it in a real way because you got sick. Hey, sickness happens. We all, whether it's the cold or the flu or a virus, a stomach virus. Hey, we get sick.
Mm-hmm.
But what this thing has become, or what they may be turning it into, in reality or by exploitation, that remains to be seen. But the situation is what it is, and we got to deal with it, right?
Well, exactly.
True.
We're obviously there is this coronavirus. It's there. We have experienced it. We're trying to figure out. I mean, there's no way to know for sure how we got it, but we had just found out. Very sad to say. Meg went to this get together about a week ago. There was someone there who's an older person who she knows and is fond of, and when she came back, she said this person. She said, "Wow, he didn't really look very well. He wasn't doing good. He was in his 90s. We just found out that he died of the virus, and apparently he had it then. I don't know if he knew that. Obviously, he must not have known. Maybe he just that he was in his 90s and felt ill, and he was out in the Hamptons from the city. But I'm thinking, well, that's probably how she got it, because she was there with with this group of people, and albeit not too long, briefly, but so yeah, it's it is a very, from what I understand, one of the differences between this and the flu is this is more contagious than the flu. And so that's one of the reasons people are to, you want to just keep your distance from people, because the number one way that it spreads is in the air. So if someone coughs and then those droplets are in the air that contain the virus, and you breathe that in, then you're very likely to get it. But it's so, like you said, there's so many layers.
Yeah.
On the other hand, it seems like there's some extreme, and obviously
Fear,
there are
fear.
unprecedented reaction to this.
Right, and there's fear
Well,
mongering. That's the thing.
That's the thing. I'm glad, Meg, you said that, because that's the real thing. Because, as I said a moment ago, I think that the conundrum they've hoisted upon us is, do we believe all they're telling us and comply like trusting little sheep, or do we ask serious and penetrating questions and question the narrative? And, it's easy to say, well, better safe than sorry, but I think that's probably what they're banking on. But I think we do need to be asking the questions, question, everything they are saying, because as you go through the headlines, man, I was just going through the headlines in the Drudge Report earlier. The fear-mongering is off the charts. And here's the thing. There are a lot of really conflicting narratives going on out there, so that's what we got to deal with on so many levels. Because even though, as you just described, Doug, the way they are explaining how it's being spread, well, that's really could be said for obviously every type of coronavirus, which is, the coronavirus is the common cold.
True.
But statistically speaking, and this is what Meg alluded to, statistically speaking, the coronavirus still hasn't even come close to matching the stats for the flu at this point in time. And if you look at the trend lines, again, depending on who you're reading, it doesn't seem like they're going to hit those things. I mean, something is going on here. I think we can agree on that. As of today, because I was looking up these stats, I was trying to keep up to date as much as I could with these stats. As of today, in America, we have tested 432,000 Americans as of today for coronavirus. Only 15% have come back positive. So what that is saying is that right now there are 64,800 approximately cases. Now, right now, the death toll, and that's obviously something that's tragic and it's sad, and we certainly don't mean to dismiss that in any way.
Sure.
A tragic death is a tragic death. But I'm just looking at it statistically right now.
Right.
In light of how they're doing all these draconian actions, there's been, as of today, 1,131 deaths of coronavirus. But just last night, I looked up the CDC estimates regarding this season right now, flu season, which began on October 1st. You ready for these numbers? 38 million flu illnesses. 38 million Americans. 390,000 hospitalizations, and 32,000, roughly, and it could be as high as 46,000. There's a window there because of the way some states report the actual deaths from the flu. But as of right now, the general working number of death by flu is 32,000. The numbers just don't make sense. They just don't make sense.
It's one of a number of people have been pointing that out. Not many. Not
the media. You're not hearing this in the mainstream media.
Right. A minority of people have been pointing that out and saying, how come there isn't the same reaction to the flu or to these other things? And that's what makes people question and wonder, is there more going on here than meets the eye?
Right. I mean, President Trump even said that, like, we don't shut everything down because of the flu. And I think he probably most likely was criticized for saying something like that because people think he's probably flippant. But I think that his task force has done a really good job as far as getting the word out and trying to deal with all of this and all the new information that keeps changing daily. You know, so I think they're doing the best that they can with the situation that's been put in front of them.
Because we want to have our country intact when this is all over.
So it makes you think.
And that leads us into what else is going on here. Because
Right.
the only difference between the flu, the common flu, for lack of a better word, and this coronavirus situation, the only difference really is the media coverage and the incessant fear mongering that they're fueling, because they are really fueling the fires, I believe, my opinion, of social manipulation. And here's the thing: we can't, as public policy, we can't allow fear mongering. We can't allow fear to dictate and mold public policy. And at this point, I think there could be little doubt that this coronavirus crisis is really being exploited to whatever degree. It's obviously real. There are people getting sick. You know that. We know that.
Sure.
But it's being exploited and used for another agenda. And we don't even have to guess about that, because just 2 days ago, Congressman James Clyburn said this, quote, "This is a tremendous opportunity to restructure things to fit our vision." Whoa.
Yeah.
Here Congress is getting together to try and ostensibly help the American people. And as you've been following the news, I know the last couple of days, the battle over all of the goodies and all of the ornaments on the Christmas tree and all of the wish lists of particularly the Democrats have stalled it. Now, I know they've got something that they've worked out, but when you hear statements like this, that this is a tremendous opportunity to restructure things to fit our vision, well, you know, that just plays totally into the reasons that we're suspicious.
Right.
What do you think?
Yeah, that kind of a comment.
Well, to me, it doesn't
Speaks
make
volumes.
any sense that they can't just put a bill together for the thing that's going on. Like, I don't understand how they justify putting a bunch of unnecessary things at this particular point in time. You want to hash those things out later, not now, like when the country is in a crisis mode, to take advantage of that to try and leverage things. I just don't think that's right as a body that's been elected by the American people to take that and then just figure out, well, we know better and we can do what we wish. I just don't think that is using what you've been elected for in the correct way.
And that's the bottom line. You know, it's like President Trump raised the question last week, and really he was just echoing what others were saying. You know, is the cure worse than the disease? You know, there are two sides to this issue at the very least. Obviously, one's the medical side, the pathogen side. That's a real thing. You know, but then there's the societal and the public policy side of it. Epidemiology is one thing. Public policy is another. And, you know, is everything being manipulated and exploited for another agenda? For me, I think it's obvious. Because, you know, I mean, think about this. I don't know if you've thought about this before. I've heard several people make this comment. But never before in history, never has a healthy population been quarantined or asked to, social distance or self-isolate themselves. It's always been the infected and the sick who have been quarantined, not the healthy. This is an absolute first, and that's what's feeding into the fear mongering. And I saw. Like, Doug, we were talking the other day, there's so much conflicting data being thrown around. And if you listen to CNN or MSNBC, I'm telling you, it's like an alternative reality. Number one, it's what they're doing over there is really disgusting in a lot of ways, because it's such demagoguery and fear mongering. But this one guy, I came across this article the other day that was put out by this guy, John Ioannidis, if I'm pronouncing his name right, John P.A. Ioannidis. He's a professor of medical health research and policy at Stanford University. So it's not just like, some, Joe Blow guy with an opinion. This guy is,
some guy on the radio, some guy who has a radio show on the East End. It's not just.
Oh, yeah. No, I was going to say not like me. I was going to say that, but but I was referring to me.
Yeah.
But he came out the other day with an article, and the title of the article was this: "A Fiasco in the Making?" ? As the coronavirus pandemic takes hold, we are making decisions without reliable data.
Mm-hmm.
The data collected, just a couple of quotes from the article. Obviously, I don't have time. We don't have time for me to go through the whole thing. But just a couple of selected quotes here. He said in this article, the data collected so far, and this article only came out a few days ago, the data collected so far on how people are infected and how the epidemic is evolving are utterly unreliable. Now, think about that one sentence with what you were just sharing at the beginning of the broadcast about how your understanding is, because of what the media has been saying, how it's transmitted around. But this doctor's saying the data is just unreliable.
Mm-hmm.
And he's questioning the fear-mongering. He's questioning the draconian measures. In fact, again, I'll quote from the article, draconian countermeasures have been adopted in many countries. If the pandemic dissipates, either on its own or because of these measures, short-term extreme social distancing and lockdowns may be bearable. How long, though, should measures like these be continued if the pandemic churns across the globe unabated? And here's the question, and this is what President Trump has been getting at the last several days. How can policymakers tell if they are doing more good than harm? In other words, again, is the cure worse than the disease? This article goes on to say, this doctor says this: even some so-called mild or common cold coronaviruses that have been known for decades can have case fatality rates as high as 8% when they infect elderly people in nursing homes. In fact, such mild coronaviruses infect tens of millions of people every year and account for 3 to 11% of those hospitalized in the U.S. But we don't close down our economy. We don't close down our nation because of it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're not saying that we shouldn't do anything about this. You're just questioning. I just want to make sure our listeners are clear.
Understanding.
Don't misunderstand.
Yeah.
We should.
My
but
point
the reaction is so extreme.
Yes.
That
we need to be questioning the motives. We need to be questioning the actions. We must ask the important public policy questions, as the president said. Is the cure worse than the disease? Are we willing to completely crash the economy only to find out down the road that everything was really exploited, manipulated, and fear-mongering? Another article in the Washington Post just yesterday, again written by, I think it might have been the same guy. No, this was a different doctor. But he was asking the same question. This was in the Washington Post. They're not exactly, administration friendly. But the director for the Center for Infectious Research had a column in the Washington Post where he was trying to balance, and here's the key, Doug, balance the medical and socioeconomic concerns. That's the conundrum. I use that word up at the top of up at the top of the broadcast. That's the conundrum I think President Trump is trying to wrestle with. There
Sure.
are obviously medical concerns, and you got
because
to
they are saying that in New York City, the hospitals are getting more and more cases of where people have to be hospitalized.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they were expecting that. I mean,
Yes.
that was forecast 2 weeks ago, that once they would do that, we were coming into a peak point, especially
Right.
in New York. New York obviously is a hot spot, you know.
And part
But,
of the reason, I think, to from what I understand, with the social distancing of people, just shelter in place kind of thing, was to slow things down so that our hospitals, the system won't get overrun.
Right.
I
Right.
could understand that. That's
but I'm glad you brought that up, because
Yeah.
what I was just about to share from this article from the other research that was going on from Hong Kong and Singapore, that's a perfect segue, because this guy, again, questioning how long can a society do that? Because he points out that mass social distancing isn't realistic for long periods of time in a nation this large. But then he goes to this study. He writes this, for example, we need to have good data on the real impact of closing public and private K through 12 schools. He says this here, and this really caught my attention. He says Hong Kong and Singapore both experienced the outbreak early, and they both attempted to respond quickly and efficiently. Hong Kong closed their schools. Singapore did not.
Mm-hmm.
And there was hardly any difference in the rate of transmission.
interesting.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
That's extremely interesting. Again, the point being is that there's a lot of conflicting evidence out there. And that's why, the original article I quoted from, he asked the question, we're making decisions without reliable data. A lot of the decisions that were made within the last 2 weeks, we were relying on what was going on in Italy. And again, just the other day, Italy admitted, don't use them as an example, because their stats are worthless. For a whole host of reasons, the Italians have admitted that their data is completely unreliable.
Wow.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that's
Trust me, guys. I've got a dozen articles in front of me right now that I can go through, because because the mainstream media is not even doing it. They're running with a narrative that they want to put upon the people, again, for whatever reason, for whatever their agenda is, which we can go down a bunny trail with that. But, I think we all know, listen, the bottom line is this. We know that prophetically speaking, the world is heading downstream we're in the last days. I know you agree with that. There's going to be terrible times. There's going to be pestilences and plagues and earthquakes. There's a plague that's going on that hardly isn't even being talked about at all because of coronavirus. But there's an incredible locust plague going on in Africa and in the Mideast. It's even going all the way up into China right now. We could be hearing stories come mid to late summer of mass famine going on in Africa because the locusts have wiped out all the farmland. They've wiped out all the crops.
I was just reading about that. And this whole coronavirus is eclipsing that story. I haven't seen
Absolutely.
it. I haven't seen it in the mainstream media. But I was just reading because I heard about it, and then I just started reading these articles, and these swarms of locusts. It's just unbelievable. I mean, I think one article said billions of locusts.
Yeah,
and
absolutely. I've been following this locust plague for a couple of months now. It's gotten worse. It hasn't dissipated.
Right. Yeah, that is amazing. I mean, it's.
I've seen some videos from videos from Africa where and it is unbelievable. It's like nothing we've ever seen ever. I mean, it really. It's when they say it's biblical in proportions, they aren't kidding. Because I don't know how people could walk. They're literally. Have you seen any of the videos, Doug?
No, I only saw some of the photographs.
You need to go online and Google some of these videos from Africa and the Mideast with these locusts. It'll blow your mind. You can't even imagine how people could drive down the road with thousands of locusts bouncing off their car. How people are walking and the locusts are bouncing off their bodies. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's absolutely unbelievable. But like you said, we're not hearing about that at all here.
Well, and these are, so now, from a biblical perspective, these are, the Bible always uses that image of a woman in travail.
Yes.
And having birth, and the birth pangs that will increase. And, and I've watched 7 children be born, so I've seen this. But as and it starts, sometimes it's a woman may have a false birth pang and, oh, no, not yet. It's not happening yet. But then they get closer and closer together. They get more intense. We could be witnessing the final
yes, they do. That's
birth
what happens.
pangs that are signaling the end. This is
absolutely
it. We and of course, people. We have to be careful because people have thought this before, and there have been times in the past where there were terrible things happening, and there were Christians who thought this is it. But I think we should always. It's perfectly fine to think this could be it, and I think we should be all the more reason to be looking to the Lord. This whole idea of being right with God, get right with God. Of course, we know it's through the blood of Christ, but there's also a getting right with God for the church, because there can be those who do believe, but we know that the church today, worldwide, but really in our country, really there needs to be repentance. There needs to be, is God trying to get our attention? He's not only shaking our country, he's shaking the whole world right now.
Absolutely.
This whole thing, all of these things together.
Yes.
And it's something that we should be taking note of as believers. And just, sounding the alarm, sounding the trumpet. You think of locusts, I always think of the book of Joel.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And there are those, I think it's Joel who talks about sounding the trumpet, blowing the trumpet, the warning, and I think these are the times we're living in.
Yep,
absolutely. Yes.
There's no question about it. And again, we keep asking the same question, but I think it's a valid question that we need to be asking, because there are these powers and principalities that have an agenda, and we got to be careful that we're not being manipulated as believers, that we're not allowing ourselves to be manipulated and exploited in line with their agenda in a lot of ways,
Right. Right.
Well,
let me just if you just joined us, let's just take a little moment here and let people sort of do a station identification here, in a sense, a program
go ahead,
identification.
take a break.
Yeah. So if you just joined us, welcome to Open Up the Doors with Andy White. Usually Andy is in the studio, and Doug and Meg Kinney are here. We're in the studio. And we have been just sharing and having Andy call in so that he can still do his show. And we're hoping next week Andy's going to do a show possibly not from the studio. We'll see how that goes. But today we're doing that. But we'll take a break, maybe play a song, and we'll come back and get your thoughts and sort of wrap things up.
Sure. Should be some
good?
questions when you come back. Absolutely.
Yeah, sounds good. All right. I had this in mind, a song called Where I Belong, because this world is not our home. And this is a cool song by Switchfoot. That's Switchfoot, Where I Belong. And It's so great when you find right where you belong. It's so great to be right in the will of God when you know that you're in the center of His will. And you can know. The Bible talks about knowing and understanding God's will. Paul, the Apostle Paul, talks about that in Ephesians, and I think Colossians talks about knowing and understanding God's will.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so great that you can know where you belong. This song talking about how this world is not, we have a sense that this world is not where we belong. This world is not
Right.
our home. We have a different home, which of course is coming, the kingdom that's coming, and heaven, and the way to heaven is through the door that is Christ. Faith in the real Jesus, the Jesus of the Bible, and we're praying that, well, we know that Jesus went, He opened up the gates for all to come in. He opened up the doors, so to speak. And
Yes,
that's
He
the name
did.
of the show. You see how that all ties in? Isn't that nice?
It's amazing.
Our show is called Open Up the Doors, and our guest is Andy White, who is on the air with us. Andy, welcome
I'm
back.
here.
Yeah, good to have you back.
I'm absolutely here.
Yes, you are here.
So, go ahead.
No, go ahead. What were your some
Well, I don't know.
Some
just
more
ask
thoughts.
me, I was going to say, why don't you ask me if you have anything you want to ask me specifically that maybe I can answer or not.
Well, I would just as an aside. What do many are? Here we are in this political season. It's a presidential race, and now that has been put on the back burner. As far as you had Biden and Bernie Sanders. Again, that one of them, and it looked like Biden will be the nominee. But meanwhile, and Biden had been making a lot of gaffes, and that's all been put on
shoved away.
on the sideline. But then you have Andrew Cuomo, who is stepping up.
Yeah,
and
you see that?
Some are saying that many are there's different rumors flying around that people are looking to him like, well, he could be our new leader. The Democrats, I guess they have in their rules at the convention that something like that could happen. What do you think of Andrew Cuomo and how he's been handling things?
I would hate to wish him upon the country.
I hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Who knows what's going on behind closed doors in smoke-filled rooms of the Democrats? They're certainly been scared and running scared this whole early campaign season. So if they think they can pull a rabbit out of their hat with Cuomo, maybe they'll try. I guess I think it's really going to depend a lot where this current situation goes. It really
Absolutely.
does.
Yes.
Let's see where we are a month from now, 2 months from now. I mean, there's this part of me that says that this thing has been so overblown and so overhyped that it's going to really just blow up in their faces. And there's a part of me that says, well, even if that's the case, that maybe because the way they've been, it's just been their MO ever since Trump has come into office. First there was Russiagate, then there was Ukrainegate, then there was, they've just been throwing everything they can throw at him to bring him down. Now, if he's able to, if we get into the summer, mid to late summer, and everything has really turned around, I mean, I don't know where the stock market is today. The last I looked, it was up like 1,100 points. It's been turning around the last 3 days. If it goes back to where it was, President Trump's going to be reelected. If it turns around and it gets, and they're able to maybe, and I say maybe, manufacture a crisis beyond this, or continue to exploit this, or continue to, continually just try to keep feeding this. Those are questions we'll only know as time goes on, really.
President Trump mentioned Easter as that he's hoping to get the country back up and running. Do you think that's, I mean, I guess there's no way for us to know if that's
Right.
even feasible.
Well, and he said that's what he's hoping for. Again, the leftist media ran with that, saying he's trying to give false hope to people, and it's like, no. If you watch his press conferences in totality and in context, they've been very, very good. They have not been the caricature that the loons over at MSNBC and CNN have turned them into, and twisting his words and misrepresenting his words. When you see him speak, I've been very impressed with him, actually. When somebody asks a question, he'll bring in one of the medical experts. Someone asks a question about the economy, he'll bring in Steve Mnuchin. He's been acting, I believe, in a real CEO managerial way. Let the experts speak to their realm of expertise. But he's the executive. We're a nation that's run by a president. We're not a nation that's run by, the Surgeon General. Here's what people need to understand. It's like, well, what about the doctors? What about the doctors? Well, they're doctors. But like I said at the top of the broadcast, there are two elements to this equation. There's the medical side, and we listen to the doctors to some degree. But then you're running a nation. And not everything is the same in the nation. The hot spots are in New York and Seattle and L.A. right now. The middle of the country is not bad. There's no reason for the middle of the country to be under lockdown. Local governments should make that decision, not the national government. This is a federalist structure in our republic. So again, like we said, there's a lot of different layers to this onion skin. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Yeah,
I kind of went on a bunny trail with that.
What do you think about people? I mean, lately I hear a lot when people are talking on the news. Someone will maybe they're talking about something legal, and the person on the show will say, "Well, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't say anything. I'm not," or maybe they're talking about medical. "Well, I'm not a doctor, so I can't give an opinion." And that always frustrates me, and it because it seems like more and more people there is this idea out there that you can't, like, if you're not a doctor, you can't say anything.
So you can't speak to a question?
Medical things. You have to believe the professionals. And I'm not saying that you know everything, but like...
Right.
Yeah.
But those are people who believe that the government is responsible for them. Those are the people who think the government's their savior. Those are the people who actually, I think their general worldview is that the government needs to run everything, and that the government is the answer to everything. That's what I think. I mean, today in Drudge, the headline is this fear-mongering headline: shock claim American deaths will top 80,000 in the next 4 months. Now, again, it's like shock jock kind of headlines, but when you read the story, it's based on a model with all, there's an old saying in the computer world: garbage in, garbage out. And we've got these academic elites putting in all this data. These are the same people that are telling us that the world's going to end in 10 or 12 years because of climate change. So no, I definitely question, very much so. I don't care that they're doctors. I don't care that they're so-called experts, because a lot of these people are living in a completely different mindset, a completely different worldview, and again, with an agenda that needs to be questioned at all times.
And that's one of the things that I tell. Every now and then we have someone who might comment on your show, they, like, in the sense of sending us an email or something, and we say, well, we do have shows on, and it's not only your show, but we have programs on Faith FM where we still believe in questioning, asking questions, being curious.
Right.
And I think that's what you're doing, and I think that's perfectly fine.
Well, here's a perfect example, again, of a different worldview and of an agenda. President Trump, a couple of weeks back, or maybe it was just a week ago, talked about the promise and the hope that's being discovered with this hydroxychloroquine. And MSNBC and CNN totally ripped into him, saying, "Oh, he's not a doctor. He shouldn't be talking about that. He shouldn't be giving people false hope." And they really twisted everything he said. But here's the fact: hydroxychloroquine is being administered right now to COVID-19 patients right here in Stony Brook. I've seen several videos from across the country. A guy in Florida swears he was healed by it. He said he felt like he was on his deathbed. It's going back about 3 or 4 days ago. He said he couldn't breathe, and he begged his doctor to give him this hydroxychloroquine. And he said by the next morning he could breathe. Now, obviously, they kept him in the hospital for several more days, but he's out now. The point is this: there is a lot of positive evidence coming out with this hydroxychloroquine. But you would not know that if you listen to the leftist media, because some guy the other day ate fish tank cleaner that had a form of chloroquine in it and died. But they don't tell you that he ate something that said not for human consumption on it. He didn't take the drug. But they were being disingenuous when they reported that hydrochloroquine killed somebody who took it. They totally left out the part that it was fish tank cleaner, that it was clearly labeled that it wasn't for human consumption, and it wasn't. It was not, in fact, hydroxychloroquine. Just because it had the chloroquine in it didn't make it the same thing. It wasn't a medicine. They are dishonest, Doug. They are totally dishonest. Millions of people are listening to these people. And then they believe them. This is what we're up against, because it is a spiritual warfare. It really is.
It is.
But,
it's very. Do you think that I haven't heard yet where I have not heard President Trump call for a day of prayer, call people to, that presidents in the past have done this and said,
yes, he did on March 15th.
2 weeks ago.
March 15th.
Oh, that's great.
Yes,
he did.
Yes, yes.
March 15th. He did
okay.
do that.
I just said I haven't heard it yet. But
I heard it. That's amazing.
That's
amazing that I heard it. That I heard it.
Right.
Also, I was like,
that was like 2 Sundays ago.
Yeah,
yes.
it was.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask a question. Has he done that? And,
yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Right,
and the thing that I find fascinating, too,
that's why they hate him. Yeah.
The pictures that are painted in the media. Like, I'm just thinking, because there's so many people in this area, anyway, that are really jazzed about Cuomo and how he's a real leader and stuff. And I'm not saying he's not speaking to the problem in a positive way and doing a good job. I'm just saying that he's still the same person that has passed things that, as a Christian, I don't believe in, and the ideals and the ideology that he has is still there. For this for this situation, he might be handling it in a way, but I also think the press isn't giving him the same kind of treatment that they do when President Trump is speaking, or his task force, or whatever the case may be, which they don't give a fair shake and do the same thing. If they did it the same to everybody, I could understand it, but they don't. Right. And I think that isn't, so you're painting a picture of a person that might not necessarily be the whole thing, and I just don't think that is the way to go in the media. I think, media used to be at least...
Well, that's why they do it, because they know that he does support those things.
Yeah, I mean, he's another hardcore leftist, pro-abortion, as you well know. I mean, last year he passed the Reproductive Health Care Act that, it's an abomination. We can now abort babies right up to full term in New York State. I mean, he's a radical leftist. He may be able to manage things better than some of the others, and give him credos for his management style and for the way he's handling some of this here. But again, yeah, Meg is absolutely right. It's about the total package. If he's going to run for president, there's a total package you got to look at, and there's nothing there that a Christian should rightly vote for.
Well, Andy, I'm looking at the clock, and it's a minute too. We have to go.
Yeah, can I just make one program announcement? Like you mentioned a moment ago, I'm going to try and put together a pre-recorded program for next Thursday, because I'm assuming that's within the 2 week quarantine you guys got there. So we're obviously going to honor that. We have to, but so I'll try and get you something for that for next week.
Right on. Sounds good. Thank you,
Thanks,
Andy.
guys.
Thanks,
Guys.
Andy.
Thanks for calling
Thanks,
in
guys.
to your own
better.
show.
Okay.
Feel
Yeah.
better. My prayers are with you guys and for your whole household.
Thank you
Will
so
do.
much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we're going to be
God
fine.
bless.
Stay
Amen.
safe.